The dense jungle canopy cast eerie shadows over the forgotten temple as our team of archaeologists unearthed a sinister scroll that promised to unravel the dark secrets of an ancient civilization. We had been trekking for days, navigating through the thick underbrush and sweltering heat, driven by the tantalizing clues from old maps and local legends. When we finally reached the temple, its crumbling stone walls and intricate carvings whispered tales of a forgotten era, and the sense of discovery was palpable. As the team leader, I felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. We carefully cleared away centuries of dirt and vegetation, revealing an entrance that led us into the heart of the temple. The air inside was cool and musty, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat outside. Our flashlights cast long, wavering beams that illuminated ancient murals depicting rituals and sacrifices. The deeper we ventured, the more we felt the weight of history pressing down upon us. It was in the innermost chamber that we found the scroll, encased in a stone sarcophagus adorned with intricate symbols. It seemed to radiate a malevolent energy. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end as I reached out to touch the cold, hard surface of the sarcophagus. With great effort, we pried it open and retrieved the scroll, carefully wrapped in layers of decaying cloth. As we unwrapped it, the ancient script and diagrams began to reveal themselves, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. We decided to take the scroll back to our camp for further study. As we made our way back through the jungle, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The dense foliage seemed to close in around us, and the sounds of the jungle grew ominously quiet. I dismissed my unease as paranoia, but the other members of the team seemed equally tense. By the time we reached the camp, the sun had set, and the jungle was cloaked in darkness. That night, we gathered around the campfire to examine the scroll. Its age was evident in the fragile parchment and faded ink, but the symbols and language were unlike anything we had seen before. Dr. Harris, our resident linguist, began to decipher the text, his brow furrowed in concentration. As he read aloud, a chilling silence fell over the group. The scroll spoke of ancient rituals designed to summon and control dark forces. And as Harris continued, the air around us seemed to grow colder. Suddenly the fire flickered and dimmed, casting long shadows that danced eerily around us. A sense of dread settled over the camp, and I couldn't help but feel that we had awakened something that should have remained buried. As Harris reached the end of the scroll, he paused, his face pale. This is a warning," he whispered. "A warning to those who disturb the resting place of the Ancient Ones." That night sleep eluded me. The jungle outside our tents was alive with unsettling sounds, rustling leaves, distant animal calls, and something else, something I couldn't quite identify. I lay in my sleeping bag staring at the ceiling of the tent, replaying the events of the day in my mind. Every rustle of fabric and creak of the tent poles sent my heart racing. When I finally drifted off, my dreams were filled with visions of the ancient temple and the sinister scroll. The next morning we awoke to find Dr. Harris missing. His tent was empty, his belongings scattered as if he had left in a hurry. Panic set in as we searched the surrounding area, calling his name, but there was no response. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. The sense of unease from the previous night intensified, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the scroll was somehow responsible. As the day wore on, our search efforts grew more desperate. We combed through the jungle, retracing our steps to the temple and beyond, but there was no sign of Harris. The jungle, once a place of wonder and discovery, now felt like a living entity, closing in around us. By the time we returned to camp, exhausted and defeated, the sun was setting, casting long, ominous shadows over the clearing. We gathered around the campfire again, the glow of the flames providing little comfort. The team was on edge, whispering among themselves about curses and ancient evils. I tried to maintain a facade of calm, but the fear in their eyes mirrored my own. As night fell, the jungle seemed to come alive with unseen threats, and I felt a growing sense of urgency to unravel the mystery of the scroll before it was too late. Determined to find answers, I took the scroll into my tent and began to study it in detail. The symbols and text seemed to writhe and twist under my gaze, making it difficult to focus. As I pored over the ancient script, a strange sensation washed over me, a feeling of being watched, of something lurking just beyond the edges of my vision. I shook my head, trying to dispel the paranoia, but the feeling persisted. Hours passed, and I made little progress in deciphering the scroll. My mind was clouded with fear and fatigue, but I couldn't stop. I knew that the key to understanding the malevolent force we had unleashed lay within these ancient words. Just as I was about to give up for the night, I noticed a pattern in the text, a series of symbols that seemed to form a sequence, almost like a set of instructions. Excited by this breakthrough, I called the remaining team members into my tent to share my findings. We worked together, piecing together the fragments of information we had gathered. The scroll spoke of a ritual to contain the dark forces, a ritual that required specific actions and offerings. As we deciphered each step, a sense of hope began to replace the fear that had gripped us. However, our relief was short-lived. That night, another team member disappeared, Sarah, our botanist. Her tent was untouched, her belongings neatly packed, as if she had simply walked away. The sense of dread returned with full force, and I realized that we were running out of time. The malevolent force was growing stronger, and it was targeting us one by one. Desperation set in as we redoubled our efforts to complete the ritual. We gathered the necessary items from the jungle and the temple, working tirelessly through the night. The air around us seemed to thrum with energy, and the jungle was unnervingly silent. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that unseen eyes were tracking our every move. With the items in place, we prepared to perform the ritual at dawn. The instructions were clear, but the execution was fraught with uncertainty. We had to trust that we had interpreted the scroll correctly, that the ancient symbols and texts held the key to stopping the evil we had unleashed. As the first light of dawn broke through the jungle canopy, we gathered in the clearing, our hearts pounding with anticipation and fear. The ritual began with a series of chants and movements, guided by the scroll's instructions. The air around us seemed to shimmer, and a palpable tension hung in the air. As we continued, the ground beneath our feet began to tremble, and an eerie light emanated from the temple. It was as if the very fabric of reality was being stretched and twisted by the ancient forces we were attempting to contain. Suddenly, a chilling wind swept through the clearing, carrying with it the whispers of countless voices. The temperature dropped sharply, and a thick fog began to roll in from the jungle. We pressed on, our voices growing louder to drown out the cacophony of whispers. The sense of urgency was overwhelming, and I knew that we were in a race against time. As we reached the final steps of the ritual, the fog thickened, and the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Shadows moved at the edges of our vision, and the ground seemed to pulse with dark energy. The malevolent force was fighting back, resisting our efforts to contain it. But we couldn't give up. Too much was at stake, and the lives of our missing team members hung in the balance. With a final desperate chant, we completed the ritual. The ground shook violently, and a blinding light erupted from the temple, engulfing the clearing. For a moment, everything was chaos. The wind howled, the fog swirled, and the voices rose to a deafening crescendo. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The light faded, the fog dissipated, and an eerie silence settled over the jungle. We stood in stunned silence, our eyes adjusting to the sudden darkness. The jungle was quiet, too quiet, as if holding its breath. I could feel the tension in the air, the lingering presence of the malevolent force we had battled. But there was also a sense of relief, a faint glimmer of hope that we had succeeded in containing the ancient evil. As the first light of dawn broke through the canopy, we began to search for our missing team members. To our immense relief, we found Harris and Sarah lying unconscious near the temple. They were weak and disoriented, but alive. The sense of victory was tempered by the knowledge of the price we had paid, the fear and suffering we had endured. In the days that followed, we carefully packed up our camp and prepared to leave the jungle. The sense of unease lingered, but we knew that we had done everything we could to stop the malevolent force. The scroll, now safely sealed in a protective case, would be taken back to the university for further study. But I couldn't shake the feeling that some things were best left buried, that the ancient secrets we had uncovered should remain forgotten. As we made our way back through the jungle, I couldn't help but look over my shoulder, half expecting to see shadows moving among the trees. The jungle, once a place of wonder and discovery, now felt like a living entity, watching us with ancient, malevolent eyes. We moved quickly, eager to leave the darkness behind and return to the safety of civilization. Back at the university, we were hailed as heroes for our discovery. The scroll was placed under tight security, and a team of experts was assembled to continue its study. But the events of the jungle had left their mark on us. Harris and Sarah struggled with nightmares and bouts of anxiety, and I found myself constantly haunted by the memory of the temple and the malevolent force we had unleashed. Despite the accolades and recognition, I couldn't escape the feeling that we had made a terrible mistake. The scroll's secrets were too dangerous, too powerful to be understood by modern science. I feared that our curiosity and hubris would lead to even greater calamities, that the ancient evil we had fought to contain would find a way to break free once more. The university's experts made slow progress in deciphering the scroll. The language and symbols were unlike anything they had encountered, and the dark nature of the text seemed to resist their efforts. I couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding, a nagging fear that our struggle was far from over. The scroll's secrets remained locked away, but the malevolent force was always there, lurking at the edges of our understanding. As time passed, the events of the jungle began to fade into memory, but the sense of unease never fully disappeared. I found solace in my work, burying myself in research and teaching, but the nightmares persisted. The temple, the jungle, the sinister scroll, they haunted my dreams, a constant reminder of the darkness we had unleashed. One day I received a call from Dr. Harris. He sounded shaken, his voice trembling with fear. "I think we missed something," he said. "There's a part of the scroll we didn't decipher. A final warning. I need your help." My heart sank as I listened to his words, the sense of dread returning with full force. The malevolent force wasn't contained. It was waiting, biding its time. Harris and I pored over the scroll once more, searching for the hidden warning. The ancient symbols seemed to mock us, their meaning just out of reach. As we worked, the air around us seemed to grow colder, the shadows lengthening. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that the malevolent force was aware of our every move. After hours of painstaking effort, we finally deciphered the final warning. It spoke of a cycle, a never-ending struggle between light and darkness. The malevolent force could never be truly contained. It could only be temporarily subdued. The scroll was a key, a way to tip the balance, but the ancient evil would always find a way to return. The realization hit us like a cold wave. Our victory had been temporary, a fleeting moment of respite. The malevolent force was still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. The scroll, once a symbol of our triumph, now felt like a ticking time bomb, a harbinger of doom. We knew that we had to act quickly. The scroll needed to be destroyed, its secrets lost to history once more. But the process was fraught with danger. The malevolent force would fight to protect its key, and we had to be prepared for the worst. As we made our plans, the sense of urgency grew, the weight of our responsibility pressing down upon us. The night we chose to destroy the scroll was eerily quiet. The university grounds were deserted, the shadows deep and impenetrable. We gathered the necessary items for the ritual, our hands trembling with fear and anticipation. The air was thick with tension, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. As we began the ritual, the temperature dropped sharply and a chilling wind swept through the room. The scroll seemed to pulse with dark energy, resisting our efforts to destroy it. The malevolent force was fighting back, its presence growing stronger with each passing moment. We chanted the ancient words, our voices growing louder to drown out the whispers that filled the air. Suddenly, the ground shook, and a blinding light erupted from the scroll. The room was engulfed in chaos. The wind howled, shadows twisted and writhed, and the air was filled with an otherworldly roar. We pressed on, our determination unwavering, knowing that we had to succeed, that the fate of countless lives depended on our actions. With a final desperate chant, the scroll burst into flames, its dark energy dissipating into the air. The light faded, the wind died down, and an eerie silence settled over the room. We stood in stunned silence, our hearts pounding with relief and exhaustion. The scroll was gone, its secrets lost forever, and the malevolent force was finally subdued. As we surveyed the aftermath, a sense of calm washed over us. The air was clear, the shadows no longer menacing. We had succeeded in our mission, but the cost had been high. The memories of the jungle, the temple, and the sinister scroll would haunt us for the rest of our lives, a constant reminder of the darkness we had faced. In the days that followed, we tried to return to our normal lives, but the experience had changed us. The sense of unease lingered, a shadow that would never fully disappear. We had faced an ancient evil and emerged victorious, but we knew that the battle between light and darkness was never truly over. The scroll was gone, but the malevolent force would always be out there, waiting for the right moment to return. With the sinister scroll finally destroyed, the malevolent force dissipated into the air, leaving behind a haunting silence that echoed the price paid for unraveling such ancient evil. We had faced the darkness and survived, but the scars would remain forever. The jungle, the temple, and the sinister scroll were now part of our history. A chilling reminder of the power of ancient secrets and the eternal struggle between light and darkness.